It is very important to know that there is no rebuilding if there is no destruction. Rebuilding always follows destruction. For example, there have been wars, uh, the First World War and the Second World War. And whenever a country, even countries, uh, went through wars, be it a war of liberation, whatsoever, when the war comes to an end, there is always a time of rebuilding. And the rebuilding always implies that what has been destroyed has to be restored. That's where rebuilding comes from. Maybe when we talk about rebuilding, we see physical things. We see buildings that have been demolished through the acts of war, through war. And then we see, okay, buildings being erected again in those places where the previous ones existed. But Noah teaches us that rebuilding goes much further than that. So therefore, let's turn to our Bibles. If you have your Bible with you, let's read from Genesis chapter 7, verse 23 through 24. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both men and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Now, here we find a passage which tells us that everything else has been destroyed. Everything. And that was during the great flood. Sometimes we call it the flood of Noah. I don't know whether it's the flood of Noah. He didn't bring it up. Maybe the flood of the time of Noah. But the world was so wicked, the people were so corrupt, that it even repented God that he created humankind. And therefore he decided to destroy everything. Now, there is only one exception, that Noah actually found grace in the sight of God, and hence he was commanded to build an ark, which he did in obedience to God's command. And as he did so, it took quite some time, and until the very time 7 days prior to the flood, actually Noah's efforts to bring aboard many people, as many as could come, those efforts did not succeed. Until the seventh day, when he was commanded to enter the ark, Noah only had himself and his family actually believing God. All the others did not believe God in order to be saved. So as a result, God brought this flood and he destroyed everything. And now, in this scenario, only Noah, after everything has been destroyed, only Noah his children, his sons, and his sons' wives, and his own wife actually remained alive together with animals that also were obedient. Even the animals were obedient, went into the ark, but the people were disobedient. Now, upon this fact, it was incumbent upon Noah to rebuild. It was a binding task upon Noah to rebuild not only his family, but to rebuild the whole earth. Noah had to rebuild everything that was destroyed. Of course, it is impossible if we see it in this way. But Noah had to restore many things. He cannot create things into existence, but he had to restore what he could restore. To Noah was this binding task of rebuilding. And he is commanded now to go forth out of the ark. In other words, Noah, the ark is not your permanent dwelling place. It was a temporary means of saving you alive. But it is not your dwelling place, so you have to go forth from it. Come out of the ark. And Noah looked around. There was no sign of life apart from his own family and the animals that were with him. Obviously, the first thing when you are told to go out of the house, the first thing actually instantly, the first thing you would think of is to find a shelter. Now, we are coming out of the ark, but where are we going to? Where is the house? That could have been the very first thing. To find something, at least to put a roof over our heads. But that was not the attitude of Noah. He knew what matters the most. What did he do? The first thing he did was to build an altar unto the Lord and to offer a burnt sacrifice. He offered of the animals that were clean. He offered that as a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord.